Morning everyone, it's Alan here at P&I Training and I'm in Newcastle's East End today, and I'm going to tell you a story about the famous armed bank robber called John Mcvicar and his escape from Durham prison and his links with the East End of Newcastle. In this TikTok, I'm going to give you a different version of events from what you saw in the books and films about John Mcvicar, so make sure you stick around to the end to see what it is. But the widely known version of John Mcvicar is this. John Mcvicar was born in 1940 in the East End of London, and in the 1950s, when he was in his teens, he started getting involved in petty crimes, car theft and things like that, and then he was arrested and taken to a remand home for kids, which he ran away from. He was rearrested and sent to Borstal for 2 years. After he got out of Borstal, he escalated himself to armed robbery. He was caught again and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. And then in 1966, Mcvicar escaped from a prison van while he was incarcerated at Parkhurst. Mcvicar was rearrested for an armed robbery that he did while he was out on the run, and he was sentenced to another 15 years on top of his sentence, and this time he was put in Durham jail. In the late 60s, Durham prison was widely known as one of the toughest in England, and it was deemed to be escape-proof. But Mcvicar had other ideas, and this is where his very famous story of his prison break came from. And they actually made a film about it in the early 80s with Roger Daltrey taking the lead part of John Mcvicar. So you probably need to watch that. Yeah, it's a really good history. So the story goes, Mcvicar broke out of his cell by digging out of it. Now, as he was digging out of it, every night he would put it back together with bricks and mortar that he had made out of paper mache, and he would paint it the same colours of the wall. So the screws didn't know that he was digging out. Then eventually he went out through his wall, into the yard, and then over the wall and dropped out into the darkness. Now, the common version of events are that Mcvicar, when he went over the wall, went down to a farmer's field and hid there for the night. And then he made his way down to Chesterley Street the day after, and for about 2 days he hid from the police. He was barefooted, he was looking for food, and he was trying to make contact with London so that would get him back home. Mcvicar found a phone box and he contacted London. Well, that bit actually happened, but this next bit, I've got an alternative version. Right? Now, in the film and in the books and Mcvicar's stories, he says that a car came up, picked him up, took him back to London. But I was told a different tale in the 1990s. Now, I used to have an associate, a friend of mine, who was a bare-knuckle boxer, and he told me a different story about Mcvicar, which is what I'm going to tell you now. Now, of course, all those things happened, and Mcvicar's history was there right up until that point when he left Durham prison. Now, the alternative story I got was from a friend of mine, the associate of mine. He was an underworld boxer, bare knuckle, and he used to fight a lot, and he had a lot of connections. He used to tell me a lot of stories about gangsters in the East End in Newcastle and around the country, which is why I got interested in it. And he told me that a friend of his who he used to fight with, the Irishman, that Mcvicar, when he made the phone call to London, another phone call was made into Newcastle to a set of Irish gangsters. The Irish gangsters went and picked Mcvicar up, and they brought him to this location here. Right now, I'm stood on the corner of Ford Street and Walker Road in Baker, and just behind me, there was a pub right on the corner. Now, you can see from the image that there's a bar right here on the corner called the Rose and Crown. The Free Trade's still behind it there. And on the right of me is Newcastle city centre. And apparently, this was the location where they brought John Mcvicar. He was brought here by Irish gangsters, and he was put upstairs into the loft where he stayed for a couple of days before the Londoners came up, put him in a car and took him back down to London. Now, why would you bother believing that? Why not just a common tale? My associate was an underworld character, and when he told me the story, obviously you've got to check it out. Now, there isn't any written evidence about this, but as soon as I start checking out, the Irishman used to be a doorman in there in the late 60s through the 70s. To be a doorman in the Rose and Crown in the 60s and 70s, you had to be one of the hardest people in Newcastle, because that would have been a docker's pub. And the links between the Irishman and the town moor where he used to do a lot of his boxing, a lot of the Irish underworld would have been there. And of course I asked the question. I said to him, I said, well, why is that not in any documented evidence? Why is that not in the book? Why is it not in any films? And the answer was quite a simple one. That these people were very heavy hitters. Right? And Mcvicar couldn't just go and name drop and say, oh, such and such helped us out, because there would have been trouble. And in that kind of world, people don't tell tales. And when I really stop and think about it, is it more conceivable that Mcvicar was running around Chesterley Street barefooted for 2 days when he was the most wanted man in England and he wasn't found, or he was stuck up in a loft somewhere hidden? Well, there you go then, some links between John Mcvicar and biker in the East End of Newcastle. Is it completely true? I don't know, and we'll probably never know, because John Mcvicar's dead, and just about everybody associated with the bars and pubs and clubs in the East End of Newcastle aren't around either. And my associate, well, I'm not going to go on asking him any more questions, because he doesn't like too many questions being asked. So, I'll leave that with you. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.